How did Sparking Zero die so quickly? Here's why. We must start from the fact that this game had a huge weight on its shoulders, being announced as the official successor to one of the most beloved anime game sagas in history. The expectations it had to meet were extremely high, and this is important to keep in mind because it's not an excuse. Having a great responsibility does not mean that players are going to rate it with a harsher hand, but the audience that was waiting for the release of the game is wide, and there may be average people who will like and dislike some things, but there may also be a lot of people who give the game a 0 because Vegeta Ultra Ego wasn't in the game at launch, if you know what I mean. Sparking Zero had an impressive expectation campaign showing practically everything we wanted to see, detailed gameplay that looked very well worked, a focus on story mode, many new characters in each trailer. The hype was growing more and more. The internet blew up every time there was a new trailer. This from the veterans who played the original trilogy and also those who were waiting for a game with Dragon Ball Super characters that looked this good. And well, also those who were influenced by the trend and were just waiting for the game because it's what everyone was waiting for. When the game finally came out, it was a huge sales success, selling 3 million copies in its first week of release. I've said it before, but this game exactly lived up to all the promises that made Tenkaichi so successful on its time. The style, the gameplay, the story mode, the number of characters, the accessibility, everything was identical to Budokai Tenkaichi. Personally, I played it and literally went back to being a kid, trying out every character I could, seeing every technique the fighters had, and spending hours playing with friends, just like I did when I was a kid. I'm sure many experienced it the same way as me, the same ones who had already played Tenkaichi 3 for example. And just like with the original games, Sparking Zero can bore you quickly. You play through story mode, you play a few tournaments, you play with friends, even the new game modes like custom battles. They add little to the game content in general to give it more replayability. I don't know, at least that's how I felt. I thought we were going to be able to see a lot of interesting scenarios of people around the world, but the stories that are created are very predictable and I ended up getting bored quickly. And well, all this happened just in the first 2 weeks of launch. People were getting tired too fast, and everyone was wondering why, if the game has everything it promised, right? The gameplay is super fluid and with many characters, many unique interactions, spectacular animations. What was it that didn't work for them? Many will say that it's because of the online mode, a mode that from the beginning it has felt pretty unbalanced, for reasons like attacks take a lot of health in relation to the amount of health the characters have, and that's why fights don't last long, or that they are tired of always seeing the same 4 or 5 OP characters in the matches because people only think about winning, that there are few stages, that there are not enough costumes for the fighters, and well, all of these points are valid. It's important that the communities give their feedback to the game so that it improves over time. But in any ways, I don't know if by correcting all of that, the game will recover the player base it had in the beginning, and that's where the problem lies. Sparking Zero is always being measured based on the number of active players it has on Steam or whatever platform. I mean, the more players it has, the more successful the game is, right? In this case, I don't think so. Financially, it's obviously not a good thing to have few players, but I like to define success as the good game it managed to be, in the same way that Tenkaichi 2 and 3 managed to become icons of their time. I think the real problem was taking a success formula from more than 17 years ago to the present, thus ensuring a momentary success, but due to the media in which gaming is currently found, it didn't work to maintain the game over time. Now they want to measure everything with the Steam player base, and of course, Sparking Zero being an arena fighter and having a ranked mode and everything, they measure its performance with these numbers. And if you see that there are only 90 active players and that when you go online you only find players with Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta spammers, obviously you are not going to find it fun. Now, in 2006 or 2007, that player registry didn't exist. The success of a game was only measured by the number of sales and by pure popular opinion, something that the Tenkaichi saga had plenty of, because it was never intended to be a game as a service or that had an active online multiplayer. It was intended as a party game in which any fan of the series could have epic fights with their friends at home, and they achieved that approach. Bandai had so much confidence in this formula taken from so many years ago that even a few days after the game's release, they announced the cancellation of several licensed game projects, such as One Piece, My Hero Academia, and others. They realized that the difference in sales compared to those of newly released Sparking Zero was abysmal, and it's noted that they wanted to continue focusing on franchises like Dragon Ball so that their investments would be more profitable. Now, where it failed to meet expectations was the active player base, precisely because with periodic expansions and DLC releases every 3 months, this audience, which was never used to that, wasn't going to just wait. That was proven with the first DLC they released, adding content from the superhero movie. Many users returned to the game for a week to take a look at the new characters in a few matches, but nothing beyond that. After a couple of days, everything was still the same. There are those who say that they should put more effort into the story mode and that there should be more material in cinematics, different mechanics, and that kind of things. I would love that too, but let's remember that this was almost never the focus of Tenkaichi. The story was always revisited episodically and almost never in such an emotional way, with so much emphasis on the narrative. Perhaps with the second installment that may have been a little different, but its greatest contribution was the cinematics in the game engine that showed us a great attachment to the source material, and Sparking Zero already has that. The dramatic cinematics are already there, the Saiyan Saga, the Cell Saga, the Tournament of Power, etc. There are not many, but they are not much less than Tenkaichi 2 had. I repeat, that is not the focus of the Tenkaichi saga. So what does Sparking Zero need to avoid being forgotten so quickly? In my opinion, it has nothing to do with that, because I'm sure that many of those who are watching this and those who bought the game since it came out, or even those who are about to buy it, are going to be part of the player base who doesn't spend their time online, but playing casually with their friends, as has always been seen in this beautiful saga. Those numbers were not reflected in the past, but they are exactly the same numbers that made this game one of the most anticipated of last year. A community that enjoys the game for what it is, a casual arena fighter where you can destroy entire worlds, collide energy waves, and fight until you fall to death. And yes, you may get a little tired of the game formula after a couple of hours, but you will always want more after a brief break. It's one of the only games in history that doesn't need any update or microtransactional gifts ideas to make me want to play it again from time to time. However, not everyone thinks like this. Currently, games like Fighters have a lot more replayability thanks to their traditional fighting system. It's excellently designed, but it's true that many of those who play Fighters bought Sparking Zero with online in mind, something Sparking Zero isn't perfected for in the long term. It's easy for people who come from these communities to find huge flaws, precisely because they felt like they were in the wrong place. That's why they're no longer here. And it's true that we're in an era where competition is everything. The biggest fighting games are now even measured by how many tournaments they have, or if they are even taken into account in that year's Evo. Obviously, it doesn't work like it used to. The Tenkaichi formula is very out of place in this new system. It may never find its place, and the most profitable thing for Bandai may simply be to keep adding DLC to Xenoverse 2 until the end of our days. There's no way to know. We can't wait to see if with the third DLC or some new concept they manage to capture the attention of those concurrent players that they look for so much. One thing is sure, and that is, as I always tell you, don't worry so much about seeing if the game is still alive. According to the people on Twitter, you worry about enjoying the game you like and playing a few games with your friends. That's why they brought us Sparking Zero. That's why the magic of these games was born. But tell me what you think. Do you agree? Do you feel the game is worth buying even now, some 6 months after its release? Or if you don't even care about all of this, it's also valid. Tell me in the comments. Thanks for watching. That was all for today, guys. Take care and see ya.